There are Canadian cities where you can rent a one-bedroom apartment, not a basement but above ground, for under $1,500. In major cities like Toronto and Vancouver, rents are skyrocketing, so many Canadians are starting to look for more affordable options in other parts of the country. And from a financial perspective, this makes sense. 31% of Canadian household spending goes to shelter, including rent or mortgages, making it the biggest expense. So if you want to cut expenses, it makes sense to start with your rent. Now let's count down the 10 cities in Canada with the cheapest rent. And if you enjoy this video, consider subscribing and hit that bell to get more videos from me. At number 10, we have a city that's considered the honeymoon capital of the world because of its beautiful natural landscape. Niagara Falls in Ontario has a population of 94,000. It's about 1.5 to 2 hours away from Toronto, so many people choose to live in Niagara Falls and work remotely for an office in Toronto or commute several times a week. That way, they can kind of geo-arbitrage and benefit from the low rent. In Niagara Falls, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment is still $1,649, and a two-bedroom apartment $2,013. For reference, the nationwide average rent is $1,918 for a one-bedroom and $2,301 for a two-bedroom apartment. And I was curious to find out if these were just stats or something you could actually find on the rental market. So here you go. A 350 square foot one-bedroom above-ground apartment at $1,400. And for $1,950, you can even rent this two-bedroom townhouse. The next city is much larger, located in the province of Quebec, north of Montreal, where most people speak French. Ranked number 9 in terms of cheapest rent nationwide is the city of Laval, with a population of 443,000. Laval is home to companies like Bausch Health, a pharmaceutical company, and Alimentation Couche-Tard, which runs convenience stores worldwide, including Circle K, and then there's also Structube, a furniture retailer. And here you can rent a one-bedroom apartment for $1,595. And you can actually find a modern apartment almost 800 square foot large like this one here. In Toronto, half the size of this apartment would easily cost you $2,000. In Laval, you can even rent this 3-bedroom bungalow for $2,600. The next city is in southwestern Ontario, a 4-drive-hour away from Toronto, but only 1 hour away from Ann Arbor, Michigan. Right across Detroit in the US, we have at number 8, Windsor, Ontario. Windsor has a population of 230,000 and is known as the automotive capital of Canada. 3 major car makers are headquartered here, including Ford, GM, and Stellantis. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment here is $1,530, and for a two-bedroom apartment, $1,792. Here's an example of a two-bedroom apartment I could find. Nothing luxurious, but at $1,700, also not too much to complain about. Although if I think back 6 years ago, in Toronto, you could still find apartments at similar quality at the same price. But that's in the distant past. And next, we'll go west to the province of Manitoba. It's famous, or rather infamous, for its high crime rate, which is triple the national average. Ranked at number 7 is Winnipeg, with a population of 835,000, making it Canada's 8th largest metropolitan area. But the high crime rate doesn't bother everyone. After all, people are still living there, and in fact, the population is even growing. Most people in Winnipeg are employed in healthcare and social assistance, which makes up 14% and 11% in retail. Interestingly, the Royal Canadian Mint facility, which produces Canadian coins, is located in Winnipeg. I wonder how many of those crimes have anything to do with this. Anyway, a one-bedroom apartment in Winnipeg rents on average for $1,444 and a two-bedroom apartment for $1,839. And I could actually find a lot of listings for below $1,500. Like this almost 600 square foot, very bright and modern apartment renting for just $1,455. For the next city, we're heading to Quebec again. At number 6, we have Quebec City, with a population of 839,000, and the 7th largest metropolitan area in Canada. Old Quebec was actually designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1985, and it's really beautiful. Here, the provincial government is actually the largest employer in the city. In Quebec City, rent for a one-bedroom apartment is on average just $1,431, and for a two-bedroom apartment, $1,708. And if a studio apartment works for you, you can even get this one here for just $900, which is mind-blowing. And not only are the rents cheaper here, it is also much more affordable to buy a house in Quebec City than it is in Ontario. And just in case you're looking for Canadian cities to buy a home for under $500,000, then check out this video here. In case you're living in a city with unaffordable rent, but you can't move out or don't want to move out, then you have to compensate for that expense by making your money grow faster. And you can do that by investing your money on an investment platform, and there are many great ones out there, but the one that I use currently is Wealthsimple. It's great for beginners because it's so intuitive and easy to use. Plus, unlike some other platforms, there are no fees for both buying and selling stocks and ETFs. Use my referral link in the descriptions down below and get a bonus of $25 once your account is funded. Now on to number 5. City number 5 is one of Canada's most trending cities at the moment and has recently experienced an influx of local as well as international migrants. No, we're not talking about Calgary, but its neighbor just 3 hours north, which is Edmonton, with a population of 1.4 million. It's one of the coldest cities in Canada, with temperatures dropping to as low as minus 27 degrees Celsius in the winter. And of course, it feels even colder than that. But surprisingly, Edmonton is also one of Canada's sunniest city, with 325 days of sunshine per year. Another thing to rave about Edmonton, there is 0% provincial sales tax. You know, that additional 8% you pay on top of the 5% GST in Ontario and in some other provinces. And talking about rent, a one-bedroom apartment in Edmonton rents on average for $1,368, and a two-bedroom apartment for $1,708. Question to you living in Edmonton or real estate agents out there, is it still easy to find homes renting for this cheap? On to the next city. At number 4, we have a city in the province of Saskatchewan, which oftentimes gets mixed reactions. It's one of the most affordable cities to live in overall in Canada, with many people flocking there. At number 4, we have Regina, with a population of 249,000. Regina's population has actually grown by 24% in a decade, the third fastest among urban centers in Canada. The reason that many people move to Regina is that it has a very favorable income to cost of living ratio. The median income in Regina is the 4th highest nationwide, but at the same time it has the 4th lowest rent. Here, a one-bedroom apartment rents on average for just $1,320, and a two-bedroom apartment for just $1,537. So if you can secure yourself a job that pays on the higher end and get a super cheap apartment, then you can pocket the difference and save and invest all that money. And it's not just the stats saying that, because here we actually have a decent one-bedroom apartment for just $1,080. Now on to the top 3 cities in Canada with the cheapest rent, and when I looked at the prices, I couldn't believe it. If the rent was the only consideration, I'd move right away. At number 3, we have another city in Alberta, just 3 hours north of Edmonton, in the middle of the Athabasca oil sands, surrounded by boreal forest. Put it in the comments down below if you can guess it. At number 3, we have the city of Fort McMurray, with a population of just 68,000. Extreme temperatures can reach as low as minus 40 degrees Celsius here. Fort McMurray is the heart of one of Alberta's hubs of petroleum production. Besides the oil sands, the economy also relies on natural gas and pipeline transport, forestry, and tourism. Here, the rent for a one-bedroom apartment is on average $1,251, and a two-bedroom apartment $1,429. And yes, I could find this beautiful, bright one-bedroom apartment, almost 700 square foot, for only $1,224, including water and heating, which otherwise in that area could amount to a lot, I guess. Next, we're going back to Saskatchewan again. At number 2, oftentimes referred to as one of the most underrated cities in Canada, is Saskatoon, with a population of 266,000. Saskatoon has a beautiful scenery with 9 river crossings and is nicknamed Paris of the Prairies and Bridge City. Here, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment is $1,239, and for a two-bedroom apartment, just $1,454. And I could find this spacious 780 square foot apartment for just $1,350. Now let's talk about the city in Canada with the cheapest rent. And before uncovering this one, I just want you to pause for a moment and look at the following. The following is what people are trying to escape. A tiny 200 square foot apartment renting for $2,000 in Vancouver. So even if this next city at number 1 is not perfect, you might just consider moving there, save up a ton of money, and after that moving to somewhere else that's more ideal. At number 1, we have St. John's in Newfoundland and Labrador with a population of 213,000. The city is the center of the oil and gas industry in eastern Canada and is one of 19 world energy cities. ExxonMobil is headquartered in St. John's, and companies such as Chevron, Husky Energy, Suncor Energy have major regional operations in the city. And here, a one-bedroom apartment rents on average for, I couldn't believe it, $980, and a two-bedroom apartment for just $1,216. So let's put this to the test. Honestly, I found it a bit difficult to find listings, but in the end, I did find this 3-bedroom apartment starting at $1,235, which is just mind-blowing. That being said, these are all just average numbers, and it doesn't mean that you cannot find deals in the big city, although they are few and far between. And if you're curious to find out where you can buy the cheapest homes in Canada, then watch this video next.